And we're 4 years in now, and we are seeing some progress around regulatory collaboration and also for the PIA defining clear separation of roles, right, with the upstream regulator and the midstream and downstream regulator. I don't know if you recall when the president made a statement and said subsidy is gone. I think some numbers were thrown out, which was around 3.3 trillion naira in fuel subsidy in our budget. Now, this would have been money that would have been targeted towards gas infrastructure or social programming, health and education, but all that was really going to regressive fuel subsidies. So you can't be hoping for a gas for growth agenda, right? And you're paying these huge fuel subsidies. So I think that was very courageous. And I think that was very important for that to happen at this time. The other governance issue and reform was around the payment to
Welcome back to Connecting the Dots. There's a joke Nigerians tell ourselves: we're sitting on gold but begging for bronze. Except it's not really a joke. It's not gold, it's gas. We have enough gas to power the entire economy 3 times over, and enough to make us an energy exporter. We know this. The government knows this. Every policy document since 2008 has said the same thing. Gas will save us. Gas is our transition fuel. This is the decade of gas. And yet, we're here, still burning diesel, sitting in the dark. So what's the problem? Is it the reserves, technology, or the market, or is it something else? My guest today has spent her career in the in-between. She's worked at the Petroleum Equalization Fund and at NMDPRA, the agency that's supposed to make the gas sector work. She's been in rooms where the plans get made, and she has all the answers. This conversation is about the gap between potential and reality. Ladies and gentlemen, she's Adaora Ugwu, the head of investment management at the Midstream and Downstream Gas Infrastructure Fund. Adaora, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah?
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So do you have all the answers?
I don't have all the answers,
but we know where we can find them?
Well, we know where we can find them.
Awesome.
We know where we can find them.
Gas has always been a topic that most Nigerians think we have a lot of oil, but we actually have a lot of gas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there comparison between the two?
So yeah,
for the common man.
So we've always known ourselves to be an oil country, but we now discovered that we actually had more gas than oil. So over 200 TCF of gas in Nigeria. That's huge.
And for our audience, what does TCF mean?
2 trillion cubic feet of gas. I hope I got that right.
250.
So yeah, we're a gas country.
Okay.
Yes.
And if we compare to other countries, where does Nigeria rank as far as the known reserves?
We're at number 6 or 7 at the moment, in terms of actual reserves size.
So you're saying that Nigeria is around in the top 10
yes.
as the gas nations
yes.
in the world?
Yes, in terms of gas reserves.
So why don't we just export gas and just relax?
Is that what we want to do? Right. So we want to export gas to shore up our forex reserves, right? But we also want to deepen domestic gas utilization, right? And I think that that's where some of the ideas around the decade of gas, as you just mentioned, have come through. And you had also mentioned earlier that we've always had great policies. From 2008, we had the Nigerian Gas Master Plan, we had the Nigerian Gas Policy, and then now we have the PIA 2021, which has sort of provided a basis, right, for deepening that gas market and deregulating the oil and gas sector.
And maybe a stupid question, but who is in charge of gas in Nigeria?
When you mean in charge?
So just like you've got a Ministry of power? Is there a Ministry of Gas?
I don't know that there is. I feel like gas is our fuel, one of our fuels. I don't know that there is anyone in charge. I believe it's a collaborative effort amongst institutions. The PIA did us a huge favor and set clear roles for two regulatory agencies, right? Which is the Upstream Regulatory Agency, which is handles exploration and production. And then we have the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Agency, and that handles the midstream and downstream around processing, storage, distribution systems, transportation infrastructure, and pricing.
Okay.
Right. So, which is where I work right now, full disclosure. And at a very interesting time where in 2021, when the PIA was passed, we saw the merger of three distinct agencies now defunct, which was the Petroleum Equalization Fund, the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, and the Midstream and Downstream section of the Department of Petroleum Resources. So all those three agencies came together to make up what we now have as the NMDPRA.
That's interesting. So there's a lot of different people who played different roles.
Different roles over the years, and also different cultures, different mandates.
Of course.
So imagine bringing all that together in this huge, big public reform and this huge merger. So that had its teething problems initially, but I think we're well settled now. We just celebrated our 4th anniversary as an organization. So yes,
It's awesome.
interesting times ahead.
You mentioned the decade of gas. When did it start and when does it end?
So the decade of gas was announced in the last administration, 2021, with huge ambitions, 2021 to 2030.
Okay.
And I believe that the mandate was simple. What are we doing with Nigeria's huge gas reserves, and how do we want to move this gas into market? How do we want to move it into industries and homes? How do we want to export for forex to the country? And how will gas work to create more jobs and industrialize our country?
Interesting. What progress have you seen over the last, I guess, 4 years?
4 years. So initially, I think what happened is that our institutions and policy and our regulations wasn't really ready for the ambition.
Okay.
But I think much progress has been made in the past, since 2023, under the new administration. The presidency recently announced about $8 billion of unlocked investments in the gas space. And under the decade of gas, they also announced about 215 or so identified gas utilization projects. And we are also hearing that there might be a potential to unlock an additional 20 billion, right? So Nigeria,
Wow.
$20 billion I think there's so much progress being made. And I think there's a lot of more institutional coordination between the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, the Ministry of Finance, the Office of the SA Energy to the President, the regulatory agencies, both upstream, midstream, and downstream, and critical stakeholders, IOCs. I think that we had, I believe, 2 or 3 major FID taken in gas projects in the past 18 months.
Really? So we're actually having people bringing FID into the country.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that has been done in sort of making Nigeria attractive as a destination for capital and investment in gas.
Interesting.
Right? So in October last year, I believe Shell announced FID on a high gas field. That will be pushing gas to Train 7. I think that was about $2 billion. We also had the Ubeta gas project, and we had one more, Bonga North Deep Water. So these are some of the FID, final investment decisions taken on gas, bringing more investment in that space. And I think that we're in very interesting times. I think we're very interesting. And this is thanks to the effort of these institutions.
Yeah. So it's more or less looks like there's a number of agencies, a number of different people working behind the scenes to bring these things to light, because one of the things we lacked over the last 5 years is that FID investment to be able to bring real money into the country.
Absolutely.
Are there gaps? Are there like 2 or 3 gaps that we would need to address to speed that process up?
Gaps around, I think some of those gaps are closing. The gaps will be around policy irregularities and clarity. It'll be around financing. It will be around fiscal policy. So what we've seen is a presidential push incentivizing certain creating incentives for gas utilization. We've seen some executive orders, and we have seen some VAT exemption orders around critical gas infrastructure. So we have a 0% VAT on LPG infrastructure and CNG infrastructure. We have seen executive orders around gas utilization investment allowances for gas projects, right?
But are executive orders sustainable?
They're not sustainable. They are sustainable. I think it's about signaling, right? I think
Okay.
that once you've put out that signal, right, it begins to tell the world that, hey, you know, these guys are ready for business and they're open for business. And I think we saw that with these FIDs that I have just mentioned that happened. A lot of them also happened during and after the executive orders. But I think they're also now being put into law.
Okay.
Right. So I think that that's very, very good for the country. Absolutely.
And just on that note, there's obviously governance is one of the issues that people always talk about when it comes to Nigeria and investments. But it looks like the governance gaps here are kind of closing. How has the petroleum and gas sector been able to kind of close these gaps? And some in other aspects of the sector, there's all these gaps that need to be closed.
So in terms of gaps, I would like to start with like the big broad issue, which was the PIA 2021, right?
Which took how long to pass?
Oh my goodness, I don't know, 14, 15 years, right? And I always say, let's be kind to ourselves because it took this long to come on stream, right? And we're 4 years in now, and we are seeing some progress around regulatory collaboration and also for the PIA defining clear separation of roles, right, with the upstream regulator and the midstream and downstream regulator. So I think that when people start to see policy clarity, I think that that's really useful. Some of the other tools that have been sort of used, I don't know if you recall when the president made a statement and said subsidy is gone.
Of
Right.
course.
What then?
Every Nigerian does.
Every Nigerian did. It was a very difficult, painful thing to remove
But
those
a very
subsidies,
important one.
but I think very important, right? We saw big holes in our 2023 budget and before that. I think some numbers were thrown out, which was around 3.3 trillion naira in fuel subsidy in our budget. Now, this would have been money that would have been targeted towards gas infrastructure or social programming, health and education, but all that was really going to regressive fuel subsidies. So you can't be hoping for a huge gas for growth agenda, right? And you're paying these huge fuel subsidies. So I think that was very courageous. And I think that was very important for that to happen at this time. The other governance issue and reform was around the payment to Gencos, right? And gas suppliers. That was a big elephant in the room for many, many years. And we saw that there was no liquidity in that space, and so much money was owed. So there was no incentive to invest in gas. But again, this year, as I mentioned, the president had announced this 4 trillion power debt recovery plan for the power sector. And I think that's rolling out, and I think that has given more sort of confidence in this.
Precisely. And just for our audience, 3 trillion naira.
Mhm.
In US, he's about 2.3, 2.4
Yeah.
billion.
Do the math.
That's an amazing amount of money
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
every year we pay for subsidies. So now that money has been recovered and now doing other things in the
Yeah.
economy. So
Yes. It has just created more fiscal space to do other
Mhm.
things that will solve real problems for people,
Yeah.
for Nigerians.
And given the work that the firm does on power, solving that gas supply and the Genco debts is critical
Yes.
because you've got a value chain where people get power, but the guy at the end of the line doesn't get the money for gas, and he or she can't run a business if you don't have the if you don't have the financing.
It's not attractive at all. Yeah, it's not attractive at all. At the end of the day, you want it to be that when the upstream sets domestic supply obligation and the NMDPRA feeds based on the demand set by the NMDPRA and determined, and when the NMDPRA sets price, domestic based price for gas, that it is businesses want to partake in the business, right? So this is part of what we something that is really exciting that is happening now. Some of these reforms are really going to encourage more investment in the sector.
Yeah. One of my mentors, one of the guys that we work with in the power sector, Engineer Frank Idozie from Michelle, and done some work with us on NIAF, and is actually the team lead on NIAF. He always talks around gas infrastructure is not one that you can just wake up tomorrow and just build.
Yeah.
It takes time.
It takes time.
And even before it's built, whoever's buying the gas has already procured the gas. And but in Nigeria, I think that's one of the problems we have here because of the planning and all that time it takes to go from A to B. How are we trying to solve that issue to actually get the infrastructure in place quicker?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and I think that that's one of the great things that come out of the PIA, which was the creation of the Midstream and Downstream Gas Infrastructure Fund. Now that we see in Section 52 of the PIA, and currently I head the investment management team in that fund. And the aim here is really to de-risk gas investments by government taking equity in qualifying gas infrastructure projects. Government taking equity is a big signal that, hey, we're willing to partner with the private sector. And the focus really to deepen gas utilization.
I'm sorry, what was the model before? Government is now taking equity.
Yes.
Before, what were they doing? Were they involved or were they?
So I think this is new.
Okay.
I think this is completely new, and I think that it's really exciting. We haven't seen this type. It's not really common where government takes equity. Usually, people think it's a grant, people think it's debt, but it's actually not. It's equity investment in qualifying projects, and the aim is to be catalytic capital, and also just be take off that initial risk that you see with new gas projects. As you said, they're very expensive. They take a very long time. But MDGIF is patient capital, right? So I think that is what will incentivize and crowd in private investments. So what has happened recently in the past year when the fund kicked off in 2024 was that we made equity investments in about 16 projects so far. 16 gas projects so far. And that's easily over, I don't like calling out numbers, but easily over 200 billion naira. But it's publicly available information. And what we achieved also was that when government is taking this kind of equity, investors get interested because it also again signals that the government is ready for business, right? We signed an MOU with Afreximbank, right, to unlock another $500 million of investment in gas infrastructure projects over the next 4 years. And the part of what that MOU will involve is some kind of project preparatory facility to make projects more bankable, right? And yes, and to crowd in more DFI funding.
It just sounds like a lot of work has been done, but it seems like you guys might need to hire a creator to do your comms because nobody knows all of this.
I know, right?
So why is that?
Honestly, Emeka, I think we've gotten this in the past, but as our executive director always says, it's really about getting the work done. We want to commission projects. We don't want to make too much noise about it.
More noise brings in more investors because you're seeing the reality.
It does. Right? It does bring in more investors. But as I said, this is a new fund, right? It's barely 2 years old, post PIA. And these are first set of post PIA government equity funded projects. So I think it's really good, especially in a time where we know that global capital is moving away from fossil fuel projects. Yes, and we just have to figure out a way to do this on our own as much as possible.
Well, I think it's quite impressive to see these things happening, and they're happening quietly, but at least we're getting the stability that's required in the sector.
Yes.
We always joke about, how's Nigeria improving over the last 2 years since this administration took over, and do like a litmus test. I use exchange rate. And if I look at that, I can say back in 2021, 2022, the numbers were tomorrow morning, it could be X. By next week, it's Y. So I think I'm seeing things are being pretty stable, maybe a couple percentage points here and there, but at least we've got a bit of stability. Do you think that's one of the reasons investors are coming into the marketplace, because you're now seeing that things are pretty stable?
Yeah, I think that this administration has really done a lot of work around the FX unification policy run by the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank. I think, again, it's a very good signal for investors, right? So it's one of the things where they're saying, okay, this market is becoming it's becoming more stable. Because you're right. If, for example, a promoter submits a bill of quantities for, say, I'm just going to throw out a number, say $1 million today. And at the point of delivery by their OEM, their $1 million is really no longer $1 million because of excess shit. Then you begin to have these issues. So I think that's a huge signal. Again, the other signal is the removal of the subsidies, right? Again, is the executive orders. And we have a new tax law coming up in January
1st. Get ready.
And I think that these are all sort of fiscal governance tools, right? The MDGIF is one of those tools. So is the PCING, which is the Presidential Initiative on CNG. These are sort of the tools to say, the government is really big on the decade of gas, and the government is really big on the gas for growth initiative. Because this is what is going to industrialize our country. This is what is going to create jobs for ordinary Nigerians, and drive economic growth. So for now, gas is our bridge. I don't know that it's a destination. I think it's our bridge for taking us to where we are, to really where we want to be.
And I also come back to the point that gas on the power generation side is so critical to a number of things that we do in Nigeria. I think last I checked, gas was about 85%.
Maybe 70, 75.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, so and that's half of the generation plants are not optimized. because there's not
Not
enough
enough
gas.
Yeah, we don't have enough molecules flowing.
Why
Right.
is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we that is changing. Again, there is more investment in the upstream, right? And this is what we're looking at to unlock that potential and push more molecules into the system because it's a value chain, right? Starts from the upstream. And if we're not able to bring out the gas from the ground with investment from the IOCs, we will have a problem, you know. We have a lot of work to do, but I really feel, and not from what we've seen actually, is that in the past 2 years, there's been a lot of progress.
No, and it sounds like there has been in the power sector. We joke that the biggest challenge we have is lack of coordination because there's so many different people who are touching the problem at different places. At the top of our conversation, you talked around all the different people who kind of make it work. It sounds like we need to learn from all the work that you guys have done on the gas side. How have you been able to coordinate and really put people in the right place in order to make it work?
Again, I'm going back to the PIA because it creates the fundamental structure on which the institutions are formed by defining clear regulatory roles across the gas value chain, from the upstream commission to the midstream and downstream. The Office of the SA Energy, such a useful coordinating entity around a lot of these incentives, around a lot of the presidential directives and the orders. And we have seen the Ministry of Finance involved, MBET, FIRS. So it's really I think there's just a lot more institutional coordination. And I think some of the tools that also, again, force institutional coordination is the sort of vehicles like the MDGIF and the PCING, because we're in touch with all these different organizations and agencies.
What took the PAs so long to pass? Obviously, there's a lot of different interests.
Politics and different interests. We had issues around host communities. We had issues around the fiscal elements of the bill. There was just a lot of interest. We had issues around, do we want a single regulatory agency or a dual regulatory agency? And it took, so there were so many versions of the bill until the 2021 version. And that was what went through Senate.
It seems like the sector has completely transformed in this very short period, right?
Yes. It's still transforming.
It's still transforming.
It's still transforming. Yes. It's the wheels are turning slowly. As I said, if a bill took over a decade and a half to pass, the expectation that it will take some time for us to get to where we want it to be. But I think that, again, in the past 2 years, from 2023, the progress has been phenomenal, and we're seeing the institutions settling into this idea of collaboration to move the agenda forward and to move the PIA forward. Again, Nigeria is not. We don't have issues with policy drafting and writing.
Cool.
I think we have some of the most brilliant minds. I think I work with some of the most brilliant minds in the industry. And I have met a lot of them, and I have seen people who have worked day and night to bring that policy to the table and to get it passed. Yeah. There's a lot of work put behind it. I think what we have is a plumbing issue. Plumbing around the gaps around how the institutions and how financing and implementation and institutional capacity meet. That's really where the plumbing issue is. So ideas are, whenever, we've had great policies, as I've mentioned, but implementation is around plumbing. How do you bring all those parts together? Where there are overlaps, how do you straighten them out? Where there are gray areas, how do you provide clarity just across the value chain?
Mm.
And I think with time, we're going to see more smoothing in and out of that interconnectivity.
When I joined the firm back in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of work we did was on the petroleum side, was around the PIA.
Yes.
Patrick and the rest of the guys, they
Yeah.
worked tirelessly.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just so interesting that it took this long
Yeah.
to get there. But my goodness, those efforts, yes, they didn't pay off then, but they now laid the foundation to where we are now.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's actually quite interesting to see where we were pre-PIA
Yes.
and where we are now.
Yes.
And for us on the power side, and my biggest interest obviously is around the Gencos, but it's also around gas flaring, right?
Yeah.
Because gas flaring is one of those things that you don't understand why it happens, but it's still, well, it was still happening, but it looks like from what I saw in the PIA, the punishment to gas flare has now increased
Gone up,
drastically.
yes.
So it's forcing people to do the right thing.
Yes. But also, is it enough, right? Still, is it enough? The MDGIF has taken equity investment in 2 gas flare projects. I'm really excited about that.
Really?
Because
Can you tell me more?
Yes. So we made investment in 2 gas flare projects, and we're really looking. We're hoping to do more because part of our mandate is to deepen gas utilization, but also eventually begin to reduce and eliminate gas flare by channeling gas flare penalties to the right projects. Right. So I'm sure we can have a conversation about that.
At a later
It's
date.
a very interesting conversation.
Interesting.
Very, very interesting conversation.
Then looking at the structure of this whole sector, it seems like a lot of work was put in to land us to where we are. And I remember back in 2000, right before COVID, there's a lot of conversation that, Nigeria is going to not focus on gas as its way to transition to fully renewable because renewables are the future. Gas is dirty, X, Y, and Z. But clearly, the locals and the people in country said, no, you cannot leave what we have to focus on what we want to create. So gas is now labeled a transition fuel. And in my mind, I'm not sure how long the transition is, but it's going to be for a really long time, right?
Yeah.
Gas as a transition fuel, how do we ensure, or I guess you guys are already doing things to improve how much gas we have and to increase those numbers.
Yeah.
What's the projection of the next 5 to 10 years of how much more gas we'll have in the value chain?
I think if we keep up the pace at which we are now, so imagine the investments, $8 billion so far, imagine another $20 billion, imagine more gas projects being signed on, imagine the over 215 gas utilization projects, imagine just half of that coming on stream. I think that there's so much that can be achieved in the next 5 years. I think that the Gas for Growth initiative, and with the pressure and the amount of work that is being put in, I see a very integrated, regulated, and investable gas market in Nigeria. With all these moves by the president and this administration to incentivize gas utilization and attract capital to the market, I believe that we're going to have a lot of more investments that will drive industrialization and economic growth in Nigeria. I do hope that with that will come also sort of, how do I say, sort of also beginning to define some of the policy conversations around renewables, right? We don't want to leave that in the dark, right? But I believe that gas is also a bridge to that, because if gas is going to industrialize, create more jobs, right? Maybe that there's a pathway to be able to even make more investments in expensive renewable technology, right?
Oh.
Maybe gas is the pathway for that to happen. Another thing that I know is happening within one of the regulators, the NMDPRA, is that we are embedding some of the international financial reporting standards into the regulations, into regulations to the markets, so that our stakeholders know that we want, for example, sustainability disclosures in the work that they're doing. We want some of the ESG principles being followed, right? The NMDPRA is now part of the International Financial Reporting Alliance, and because we know how important these things are in the world we find ourselves today, right? So yes, I think that we can't ignore the fact that there is a transition, but I think that the gas that we have has to be utilized to bring benefits for Nigerians. I think that's very important.
One of the projects I worked on was around working with the GENCOs to monitor emissions, and also monitor more or less the emissions each turbine was putting out.
Okay.
And this was pre-PIA. And it wasn't taking that seriously. But post-PIA, my goodness, like
really, what is happening in that space?
Because it's now a requirement. GENCOs now have to report it. There's no two ways about it. So it's from a climate point of view, from a clean energy point of view, it's a fantastic thing that has happened, because you're not able to hold people accountable and say, you must clean up how you generate power. It's not just having the power. You got to do it in a cleaner and a more sustainable manner.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Yeah. And in fact,
things are changing.
Yes, things are changing. In fact, one of the other pieces is that the NMDPRA is working with the Financial Reporting Council, right, to understand how we can effectively ensure that those we regulate are actually reporting ESG and reporting sustainably in their financials. And I think that's really interesting. I think we need to build more capacity around that. Again, because it just makes us more attractive to climate financing options for even gas projects, right?
Precisely.
So yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. It's exciting times, and I'm really just honored to be sort of part of that process, because it's a huge reform that is happening across the whole value chain, and I'm glad that you guys are putting the pieces together, right? So yes.
Trying to.
Yes.
Last question.
Yes.
Capacity. How do you build capacity in this growing sector?
Capacity in terms of the
people,
institutions and the people.
Yes, because human beings have to do this work. It's not just not just a piece of paper.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, that's a big piece. As I said, imagine the merger of three different organizations, and it's different cultures, different skill sets. There's a lot of training and retraining. There's a lot of sort of exchange of ideas. We're learning as we're doing, right? And also we're learning from those who have done it before. So yes, there has been a lot of effort. That is a big piece of it. And but we do have some of the best minds still. I think more importantly, it's just keeping up with what is happening around the world and ensuring that you're not left behind, right? So
nobody wants to be left behind.
Nobody left behind, and that's the principle that the authority chief executive has, right? Train and train and train, and ensure that the NMDPRA is the regulator who has a vision and foresight and is up to date with what is happening around the world. So yes.
Awesome. What's your last word? Do you have any last word for us?
I think what I would say is that I would love to see a Nigeria where molecules are flowing through all the pipelines, where gas is a bridge to economic growth, job creation, and just a better Nigeria for all of us. And I feel like we are on track for that.
Yeah, I think so as well. One of the topics we did not cover was vandalism, but given the red tape around that, we'll stay away from that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Adaora.
Thank you.
Thank you. This podcast is brought to you by Next Year Capital, committed to driving conversations that shape Africa's energy future. Please subscribe, share, and stay tuned. Until next time, I am Emeka Okpukpara Jr., and this has been Connecting the Dots.